Thanks for joining us this evening. This is fantastic to have you along. You're in Nashville right now.
Yep. Yeah.
What made you go to Nashville? Where are you from originally?
So I am from a little town called Lockport, New York. It's equidistant to Buffalo or Niagara Falls. So I usually just say Buffalo because people know where that is.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, so super close to Canada. And I went to school up there as well and graduated with a music business degree. So I knew that I always told myself, I have the ability to work on the business side, but I would like to give the performance side a fair shot. Or, even better, get a job in the music side while working on my own performance stuff. And so I kind of had to make a decision of New York City, LA, Austin, Nashville, Chicago, the music cities, and Nashville seemed to be the best for other goals in my life as well. I just bought a house and I have animals in a backyard, and that's something I wouldn't be able to do if I was in LA or New York City. And also just culturally, I've always liked the Southern culture, the hometown feel. People here are really nice. So I just felt like Nashville was the best city for me to accomplish all the things I wanted to do and also, work towards a career in performance.
It's a great balance, and people are a bit nicer in the South.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being up from New York, I'm sure. Yeah, I used to go through Buffalo to get to Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I passed through Cleveland on the way because usually, since I have a dog, I'll go home for Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, and I'll drive so that I can just take him with me. So I know Cleveland is like around the halfway point for me usually.
Yeah. So Nashville has been good to you so far, just being able to do the things that you've been doing. Have you been performing a lot in the area over there before COVID and all that hit?
Yeah. So I had a couple gigs before COVID hit. I had just kind of started gigging because it took me a while, and it's still something I'm figuring out of how to meet other writers and other instrumentalists to work with. So when I first got here, I was really just focused on finding a job, and then I started working at ASCAP, which is a performing rights organization on Music Row. So I met a couple people that way and played some open mics once I had my first original song because I didn't really want to do um, cover songs anymore. I did that a lot in college, but I was like, nope, I just want to do my own stuff now. So once I finally had a song to do, I played a couple open mics here and there, and then COVID hit. So that all went virtual.
Yeah, just starting out, it's really been tough, obviously, for people who are just starting out and wanting to just get through it, and then all of a sudden this huge wrench comes in. So that's got to be really, really rough. But then, how do you find your inspiration to overcome that now? What has been your strategies for dealing with COVID and furthering your career?
Yeah, it's just kind of been, I think a lot of the principles are the same. It's just a different way of doing it. I've reached out to some people online through Instagram, some contacts that I had from college in the songwriting world. And I follow a lot of artists here in Nashville and see who they're working with and who they're producing with. And I just reach out on Instagram and I ask for advice, or I ask if they'd be interested in working together. And in some of those cases, they're too big for me and I don't get a response. And in other cases, it's people who are really successful, but they're still very down to earth and still very accessible. And so I've gotten some good advice that way. The major piece of advice has just been to keep networking, which obviously I can't do in person, but luckily we do have social media. So I've really been using Instagram and my Facebook page and those kind of things as a medium to reach out to people so that hopefully when things do resume, I can, hit those people back up and say, hey, we talked a couple months ago about this and, we chatted, do you know of any places that are, I don't know, booking bands now, or do you know of any writers or those kind of things. I'm kind of trying to tee myself up for when I can do things in person that I'm ready to go, instead of then when everything resumes in person, feeling like I'm starting from square one.
Yeah, I stumbled on you because it was just a follow suggestion. So things
Mm.
like that happen. I just love the randomness of that and how somebody could really just discover you.
Yeah, I was wondering actually because I looked at your profile first to see, what is this about? Is this legit kind of a thing? And I thought at first that maybe you were a professor because my sister went to Ohio University. And that was the first thing I saw in your profile. So I thought that maybe there was some connection there. So I was curious how that happens. And it's funny, since I released the first song, you get your Spotify statistics and your Apple Music statistics and whatever. And some of the places are so random. Like it'll be like one play in a Middle Eastern country or one play in Germany. And it's just funny how far reaching it is. And I would love if there was a map so you could follow like how did this person get from here to here to here?
Yeah, yeah. Because you're trying to find out statistics and trying to broaden your audience and trying to get people from all over the world, which you could do that now with our technology. But like, how does that happen? Is it a bot? Is it a real person hitting this thing from
That's true. Yeah.
some strange place? Who knows? It's, you don't want to get your hopes up too high, but then again, there is that sense of flattery, like, hey, they're watching this somewhere where I would never have imagined.
Yeah. I think some of them are not bots, but some of them are from a mix up with my artist name. So I released my song completely on my own through CD Baby. But a downside of that is I didn't anticipate that. I mean, I knew Jess would be a common name, but I figured when you release a song, it has its own code and everything so that it would still assign to me. And as soon as it went live, I was doing damage control because Spotify and Apple Music had me under the right artist and the right profile and everything. And pretty much every other streaming service had me listed under different artists named Jess. And so if I'm getting plays over in the Middle East, it's possible that's because I found out there's a dubstep artist over there also named Jess. So it's possible that people are looking for her and coming across my song because it's listed across various people named Jess.
That is so tough. And you're using your last name, then like your country of origin from your family, they start looking you up and they're like, hey, is there a connection there or something? So I have a German last name. So I have people
Yeah.
not related to me for it's like there's this common, well, yeah, they're trying to like hook up and try to find this common ground. So
Yeah.
that could happen a lot too.
Well, and that's why I went by Jess in the first place, because I wanted to stick to something that was still me. But if I tried to go by Jess Wojcinski, like I have friends that have known me for years that still don't know how to spell my last name, let alone if I told someone out, like, yeah, listen to my song and this is my artist name, it would just go in one ear and out the other. So
Yeah, I could understand that. I grew up in an area. We had a lot of Polish people in our area, and I'm sure up that way in New York too. It's just where they've settled. I've got some
yeah.
Polish blood. My grandmother's Polish, so
Mhm.
very, very interesting. And people went like, "How? What's the origin? How do you spell that?" That's really, But then again, you're trying to make your name in the business, and that's like, oh gosh, now I have to make up some crazy, easy last name.
Yeah. Which is probably the route I should have gone, and maybe something to think about in the future is just make up a unique last name that's easier to spell or something.
Yeah, so many had done that, and then as you know, like John Mellencamp went back to that. He was John Cougar. It was so easy to say that, but he had obviously identity issues with that as well.
Yeah.
So going way back, growing up in New York, so how did you stumble upon singing? When did you first start doing it?
So I think I wrote in all my college bios that it started with a Fisher Price tape recorder and me singing Jingle Bells so many times that my parents wanted to give me up for adoption. But that I know they got me a Christmas gift of a Fisher Price tape recorder when I was a kid, and so I would sing with that a lot. And then growing up, my dad was doing musicals when I was younger, so big formative part of my early love of music was he was playing Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar. And at the time it was just me, my mom and dad. So there would be times when she was working late and he had to go to rehearsals. And so he would take me to the rehearsals. And I was just kind of that random kid running around with a bunch of adults trying to learn music. And then that play, I don't know if you've ever seen the show, but obviously it is the story of Jesus Christ. And so there's a crucifixion scene. and I was probably like 4. So my dad would take me backstage on the show nights to see him put on all the crucifixion makeup so that I would know that it was fake. And so I could still go to the show, even though I was only 4. And I would know that, that that was fake and that was pretend. But that really started my love of music, that, and just both of my parents are the kind of people that are always listening to music in the car and singing along. So I learned a lot of Christian songs, or I'm sorry, country songs. And then as I got older, learned a lot of Christian songs because my parents got really into worship music. And kind of just started teaching myself harmonies that way by listening to songs and then copying the harmonies until I could figure it out myself. Because country and Christian music has a lot of harmonies, and Christian worship music especially has a lot of pretty simple harmonies, and it's very repetitive. So that was a good way for me to kind of teach myself. And then when I think I was around 8 years old, I was in my first musical, and then started piano lessons and just kind of went from there. I really wanted to play drums first, but my dad told me that I had to take an instrument that would teach me how to read music first. And then if I got really good at it, I could learn to play drums, which I never did. But
It is so cool, though. I mean, to have your parents become involved and give you that guidance, because that's usually, kids will run off and do their own thing, against their parents' wishes. And it's nice to have that kind of involvement and saying, hey, wait a minute, no, you learn how to play piano here. So how were piano lessons? What was that like?
I kind of skated by, which I regret now. And I feel like a lot of adults say that, like, I wish I had taken it more seriously at the time. Cause I've always had a pretty good ear. So I would listen to my piano teacher play the song, and then I would just repeat it instead of actually learning the theory. So once I got to college, and cause I took piano lessons from like 8 years on, and it was all classical based. And then once I got to college, I realized you can't skate by with just your ear anymore. So really got a kick in the butt when it came to relearning theory and piano. But what was kind of cool is part of my degree, because it is a music business degree, so it is still a Bachelor of Science, but it's kind of a dual program where you take half business classes and half music classes, and then some that intersect. And so it was part of my degree that I also had to continue a secondary instrument. So I kept taking piano lessons, and then I took some jazz improv piano lessons as well. So I'm not as good at piano as I should be for how long I've been playing, but I have kept up with it. And as much as I hate to admit it, my dad was right in making me do an instrument that taught me how to read music and to be able to figure it out on, for songwriting and things as well.
I always find that interesting. Even some of the most successful performers are always saying something like that. I wish I had taken that more seriously. I'm not the greatest piano player in the world, even though they're amazing. And like most of us wouldn't even know the technicalities behind that. It's like, how could you possibly be saying that? And they're just very, very self-critical. So do you have a piano in your place now in your house? What's your setup with as far as instruments go?
Yeah, I do. I have it like right below where your eye line is. I have a Nord that I saved up for all of college, and that's my pride and joy. Up until very recently, it was more expensive than my car that I had since I was like 17, that I recently upgraded. But yeah, I've got my keyboard here that I primarily use to write. And I also have a guitar that my mom gave me when I wanted to take guitar lessons in college. And that's pretty good for a basic guitar. And a mandolin that I bought kind of on a whim that I've been teaching myself on and off how to play.
Interesting. Mandolin. What sparked your interest for that, to add that to the repertoire?
So I've really liked Nickel Creek ever since I was a kid. Nickel Creek and Punch Brothers, which are like progressive bluegrass. I started listening to Nickel Creek when I was a kid with my mom, because they kind of went from country to a little bit of bluegrass at times. And it was just a genre that I really enjoyed and I didn't know a lot about. And I think to play bluegrass really well, you have to have a really good understanding of theory and you have to have a really good ear. And so when I moved to Nashville, I've never been super into country, but I do like bluegrass. And so I think I bought the mandolin in college kind of on a whim, because I went to, there's a place in Rochester, New York called the House of Guitars that's like a famous music store. And I had gone there with some classmates and they were, you know, picking up guitar strings or this or that. And I was like, well, I saw these three mandolins and one of them was like a kid one. And one of them was like a very expensive professional one. And then there was a mid-range one. And I was kind of surprised that it wasn't too expensive. And I was like, I've always thought these are kind of cool. So maybe I'll just get one and teach myself how to do it. Especially I think with music, when you're trying to be successful in it, your interest can dip at points if you feel like you're stuck or you're doing the same thing. So I think that was just kind of something on a whim that I was like, I have no idea how to do this. So I'm going to try to teach myself. And then when I got to Nashville, there's a really big bluegrass community here. And that's how I got to know everyone that played on my song, Betty Lou Lane, are people that I met at church or through the American Legion in East Nashville, and just other local venues. So they were all friends that I've met. So to answer your original question, it happened on a whim. And then periodically I've picked it up just because there's such a big scene here. And I think they're also talented.
Oh, I love that Nashville sound too. And it seems like with your single that it's really obviously rubbed off. It's just beautifully done, beautifully recorded. Um, what made you go with the type of piano that you have, the Nord? What is it about the Nord that's just different from any other kind of brands?
So I did a lot of research beforehand, and I knew for sure that I wanted one with weighted keys. Um, it's just a personal preference. I tend to play really heavy-handed, and so I knew that if I didn't get something with weighted keys, that you just hear that clicking a lot if you're banging on it. And that was what I had when I was younger. My parents gave me a keyboard before I went to college, and it slowly died each key at a time. And so when I had to upgrade, I was like, okay, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to invest a little bit more in a keyboard. So a big part of it was weighted keys. And then I think part of it was just the appeal of, you see Nords on stage everywhere and you know what they are because they're the red keyboard on stage. So yeah, I had cross compared a bunch of other different brands and it just seemed like for the price and everything, I got a pretty good deal. And my thrifty at the time college self, I went to the House of Guitars and I got a price. And then I went to Guitar Center and I was like, oh, well, they told me it was this $200 less. And then went back to House of Guitars and was like, oh, they told me it was this $200 less. So I was also able to kind of haggle my way down a little bit for that. But yeah, it's just a good keyboard and it does a lot. And I thought it would be good. It's got a really intense built-in computer that I haven't even begun to understand all the intricacies of, but I figured that would be really good for recording as well.
Yeah, I would imagine. I don't know. Can you add sound effects and things like that into it?
Yeah, so one of the big things about it is Nord has an entire library of sounds online. And because it has a built-in computer, you can swap sounds out, which is really cool. So you can constantly be updating it, which was another reason that I looked at this one, because I'm sure there are comparable models now, but at the time for the price point, this seemed like it had the most options. Because I was kind of thinking too of, I don't play a lot of, I play piano. I would not want to play guitar on a song for myself or mandolin or whatever. And so I thought for the purpose of creating demos or at least creating something simple to show a producer, this is kind of what I have in mind. Having all those different sounds would be really good too, because then I can I would want a real instrumentalist on the final product, but I could at least create a fake version to give to producers or labels or whatever.
I know it's the technology is fantastic and the ease of trying to get your stuff out there is so much better. Problem is so many people can do that now.
Yeah.
Like it's in all the arts.
Yeah, that's true.
so much more convenient, because back in the old days, as you know, it was tape and have to copy and you lose the quality and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But now it's like, gosh, it's like everybody can do this. So you have to find ways of being a cut above
Yeah.
all that and trying to emerge.
Yeah. Well, and you constantly have to be learning because there's constantly new developments and better ways of doing things that are faster and more efficient and better quality. So you kind of have to constantly be reading and talking to people and just making sure that the information that you have or the technology that you have is the most current. Or if you don't know if you can't afford the most current thing, how to get the same sound from what you have. So yeah. You have to be
Awesome.
passionate about it.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you're on the road to really expanding on this. The YouTube channel features some clips. You got mainly covers there. What do you have on there? I noticed a few clips from Nazareth College. What was that like performing over there? And you performed with somebody, a doctor of some kind at Nazareth College.
Yeah. So my degree program was the only one that was not that college offers that was not a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Music, but is still music related. So I still had to do classical voice lessons, piano lessons, all that, the more traditional way of studying music. But then I had more flexibility when it came to my performances and the kind of music that I learned. So all those videos are from my senior capstone project, which I believe all college business majors have to do a capstone. Mine was just a little bit different because I did have to submit some things, like I had to submit a business plan and some other things from my accounting class that I don't remember because I barely remembered at the time, as my summary of those business classes. But then for the music classes, I also had to write and record an original song. I had to do some other things like that I think I had to submit a transcribed copy of a song or something. So I had to listen to a song and then write the sheet music. So a bunch of stuff like that. And then the final grade was on a senior recital. So I had a lot of flexibility there. I hosted it in one of the smaller like black box theaters on campus, and had to design a poster and put that up everywhere to try and get people to come, because I think part of my grade was also like how I can draw a crowd. And the one song that I'm pretty sure I have on YouTube is actually with my dad. It was The Prayer. I can't think of who wrote it originally, but I know we listened to the Josh Groban, Celine Dion version 1,000 times to learn it. But yeah, so that's on there. And then it's mostly covers because it was a senior recital. And so I had to meet certain requirements. So I did some musical theater songs, I had a classical song, I had more contemporary songs, I had a full band arrangement, and then I did one original.
Nice. So who else do you like covering? I noticed you enjoy covering Coldplay, Yellow.
Yeah, I've always loved that song. Don't know a lot of other Coldplay songs, to be honest. I've just always really liked that song. But I tend to lean more towards kind of modern jazz or like jazz pop artists. So I love Lake Street Dive, and I can't remember if I uploaded the version that I did of You Go Down Smooth on YouTube, because I've kind of neglected my YouTube channel. But I did perform that at my senior recital. And I've also been into The Dip a lot recently, which is a fairly new band that I saw at a small venue here in Nashville a while ago. So talked to the lead singer, and they were all super nice. Trying to think of who else. I used to cover Sarah Bareilles a lot when I was in college, especially because her primary instrument is piano. So those were easy for me to learn.
Yeah.
I tend to like a lot of male artists, which can be hard because then I have to, figure out, change the key or change the instrumentation or whatever. But yeah, definitely more like kind of indie pop or like jazzy pop artists.
I noticed that I like females covering males better. I think it's hard the other way around. If you say like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go do a Whitney Houston song, I can't do that. Come on, give me
Yeah.
a break.
Well, and I have a lower voice, so sometimes I don't even have to change the key.
That's true too.
It just depends on the artist. I like Ben Rector too. I've been on a Ben Rector kick. And his songs are usually like just a little bit too low, so I don't have to do too much work to figure it out. But I saw him at the Ryman with my mom, I
Yeah.
think a year or two ago, and he puts on a really good show and is from Nashville and in Nashville.
What a venue, the Ryman. I've always wanted to go up there. I've been to Nashville. I never got to go to that auditorium. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, it's a very cool venue.
Yeah. So you also covered Frank Sinatra. I get a kick out of you. That's a really nice version of that.
Oh yeah, thank you. I actually my first job ever was at a gelato place called Sweet Melodies, and we would serve gelato during the day, and then in the evening we would like perform jazz songs. So I learned a lot of jazz standards through that, and then also as I got older, when I was in college, kind of revisited it because we had a jazz band on campus, and a lot of the people in the jazz band were music business students that I was friends with and had classes with, and then I started taking jazz improv lessons. So kind of got back into it that way as well. And when I was taking those improv lessons, my teacher was like, I don't expect you to be able to learn the entire piano part and learn the vocal part in a week. So here's this program. I think it's called Real Pro, but you download it and you can basically find any jazz standard in any key at any tempo. So that was where the music for that one came from. Because I was like, I still have this program. I might as well do something with it, just try to throw it in Pro Tools and see how that sounds.
That's neat. You don't hear of somebody around your age really getting into these jazz standards. So what is it about the jazz standards that really attracts you to that?
That's a good question. Yeah, I didn't really grow up with it, so it's not something that was like instilled in me as a kid. I think it might just be a big part of it is the culture around it. There's a jazz club here called Rudy's, and it's like very like speakeasy style. It's one room, craft cocktails, and they have jazz, I think like 5 days a week, and it's all local artists. And going to hang out there is just so cool. And I feel like anywhere you go see jazz is just it's very classy. It's dressed up. It's kind of reminiscent of a more refined time. I feel like it also takes a lot of talent to be able to do it very well, especially to play an instrument very well. It's a lot of seventh chords. It's a lot of extra theory. I know there's obviously like the running joke of, if you bang on a keyboard, it sounds like jazz. But when you actually break it down and have to try and write what you hear, it's very complicated. So I think I just have an appreciation for musicians that are really, really good at what they do and make it look easy. So for the same reason that I like watching bluegrass players, I think is why I like listening to jazz artists as well.
Yeah, and the country has really seemed to have a huge influence on you too. Are there any huge country stars, past, present, that really inspire you?
I listened to country a lot as a kid, so I like, some of the older, not older age-wise, but at least older to me, of like Kenny Chesney, George Strait, Keith Urban. But I'm not super into current country. I think I like pop music. I don't like country pop. I just kind of like it to be separate. I like it to be two different genres. So I honestly haven't really gotten super involved in the country scene here other than, if I'm out supporting a friend that is pursuing country and is writing country, which is kind of funny because people, if people don't know me and they listen to the song, they're like, oh, you're probably going for like country or bluegrass. And I would love to be a bluegrass artist, but I just don't, I don't have the gift for that. I think the way the song turned out more country is it just seemed like it fit the story the best because it's a story about my grandma, and the house that I spent a lot of time in. It's very sentimental. So I just felt like, putting a pop beat to that was not appropriate to the story that I wanted to tell. So I don't know that I would create things similar to that style going forward, but it seemed to fit. it seemed to fit the lyrics and it seemed to fit the story best. And like I said before, everybody that played on it was a friend of mine that plays either on the worship team at my church or around in the bluegrass scene. So it was really cool too to be able to work with friends on that. So it kind of all fell into place.
Yeah, you could really, really tell. So would you mind playing your new single and
Yeah.
all well rehearsed for the live audience?
Yes, actually. Luckily, it took less time for me to figure out an arrangement than I thought it would.
Give me another week. You're like, I don't know if I'll be ready in a few days.
I know. Well, and I would rather have it sound good than try to throw it together and just be banging on the keys for you.
Understandable, totally.
So I actually, I had the keys, or I figured out the chords when I first wrote the song, but then as the song developed and we started recording it, the other instrumentalists started adding things and, chord voicings that sounded cool or completely different chords. And especially since the people on the track were friends and very talented musicians, I was very pro, like, do what you think sounds good. We can always do a million takes. And then if, half of them suck, we don't have to use them. And if half of them, it comes up with something great because you're just being creative in the moment, then that's great. Which was why I wasn't 100% sure if the chords were still what I had written, because it had been so long since I had actually sat down and done the instrumental part. So I took my bassist, his name is Evan Windsor, and he's super talented. He wrote out a chord sheet, like a bass sheet. And so I kind of went, he had sent it to me and I basically decoded it and used that to figure out all the chords. So that was why it was so much faster, because I used his notes instead of figuring it out myself.
Cool. Very cool. We'll give it a shot. Betty Lou Lane.
Yes.
When I was young, sure, daycare was fun, but my favorite place where I liked to go was the little yellow house on Betty Lou Lane, for the woman there that I love so. Mother of my mother, like a sister, like a brother, a best friend and teacher, all rolled into one. I'll see you on the day I close my eyes and fly away to the castle in the clouds, where you'll be there waiting, arms open wide, just like on Betty Lou Lane. With her musical voice and a lyrical love, I cherish the simplest of things, like how she loved lays, Harry Potter, and warm days at the playground across the way. Mother of my mother, like a sister, like a brother, a best friend and teacher, all rolled into one. I'll see you on the day I close my eyes and fly away to the castle in the clouds, where you'll be there waiting, arms open wide, just like on Betty Lou Lane. On Betty Lou I knew the first time my mom heard this song, she'd probably shed a couple of tears. But this song's not for crying, it's not about dying, it's about all the love in our years. Mother love my mother like a sister, like a brother, a best friend and teacher, all rolled into one. I'll see you on the day I close my eyes and fly away to the castle in the clouds, where you'll be there waiting, arms open wide, just like on Betty Lou Lane. On Betty Lou Lane, on Betty Lou Lane.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So what was it like writing that? I mean, you're starting to take your shot at doing originals and things like that. What's your style? What is your strategy for writing songs?
Yeah, so it kind of depends. This song I feel like the best songs, or at least the songs that I feel like are the best, are songs that I sat down and wrote in one session, because that's usually the most genuine if I didn't have to think about it too much. This one I wrote shortly after my grandma passed away, who I was very close with. And so I really just wrote it like a story. And I didn't do anything with it for a while because I felt like it was kind of goofy. Because some of the things are just, I mean, there's no subterfuge. There's no like, oh, what is this about? Like it says exactly what it's about, word for word. And then I also, in the bridge, it's kind of a song that's self-aware, which is not everyone's cup of tea. So I had toyed with whether or not to change that for a while, but at least the way it started, I really just sat down and wrote. And as the mood of the song is, I was trying not to mourn the loss of my grandma. Instead, I was trying to remember all the things that I had to be grateful for. Because especially since it's about my grandma, I feel like a lot of people aren't lucky enough to have a lot of time with their grandparents. And I actually even met my great grandparents when I was a kid. So I was very fortunate for that. And I really do think she helped me become who I am. So it was pretty easy to write a story about her. And then the harder part was just writing music that wasn't cheesy, since the lyrics are a little cheesy. I feel like you don't notice some of the more cheesy parts, or you don't register it that way because the instrumentation is really good. Versus, if it was just a basic, guitar, or even just how I played it on piano, I played it a little bit slower. So it sounds a little bit more sad than the actual recording does, which is upbeat, which was by design because I wanted it to be, I really, like I said in the song, it's not about dying. It's about all the love in your ears. And so I didn't want to write a super sad ballad. I did want to make my mom cry, but I didn't want to make everybody cry every time they listen to it. So my process for that was really just writing all the lyrics and then just kind of building it from the ground up. And this one, I was really fortunate. My friend Cameron Floyd, who's an artist as well, is starting out as a producer. And so we got to become friends, and he asked if he could hear anything that I was working on. So I just sent him a live video of this because I had performed it at an open mic, and he started building it and started adding more of the guitar and some of the bluegrass instrumentation. And that had not been my vision for the song, but I loved it. Like when I was listening to it, I wasn't facing him. And then he turned around and he was like, "Are you crying?" And I was like, "I'm just so excited. It sounds so cool." Cause he had done something with it that I hadn't imagined. And so that was cool too, of just seeing someone else that's super talented, do something that was completely different than what I had imagined. And then we just kind of went from there. But as far as a normal process, I don't think I really have a standard process. I think I'm a better lyricist and vocalist than I am instrumentalist. So the lyrics or a melody always come first, and then trying to figure out the instrumentation is definitely second to that.
Yeah, that's where the producer comes in, and what a spectacular job. I mean, when you listen to the single, it's just so layered. and the amount of strings really, really makes that.
Yeah.
It puts that in another dimension, and it really brings out a lot of emotion that you wouldn't expect once you have it all down to that final mix.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference. Is there an official video to this, or or are you planning on that?
No, I had kind of thought about it. I had an idea of like using old footage to see if I could find any home videos of like me and my grandma, which I'm sure exist. But when I reached out to my mom about it, she was like, those are all going to be on VHS tape. So we would have to convert all of the tapes
Yeah.
to DVD, which is possible. But realistically, if I was going to do that, I would probably have to go home for a month because I don't think I can get my mom in New York to just take on this like major undertaking of watching years and years worth of footage to do that. But I do think that would be cool to just do either like a live video or maybe a live video with like inserts of videos or photos or something like that. So I've been thinking about it. I just, being very much DIY, I have to figure out, okay, how much of this can I figure out how to do myself and how much would I actually have to hire someone and what does the budget look like for that? And so.
Exactly. And I could think as a video editor, producer, all that stuff, to get all that stuff, which would be great to have all that really digitized and get that in the cloud and all that. It's safer to have it up there too than just, having it on the VHS. And then you can edit with that. It's so time consuming, but it would be worth it in the end. But you have to, a live video would be a whole lot easier. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I also just have to be realistic about the fact that, this is my first song. And most of my quote unquote fans are friends and family. So I really have to think about what I'm putting my money into. And I'm kind of hoping to put that into a pop producer and my next song, someone that'll really help me think outside of the box that I'm in currently versus, using that budget for a song that's already been out for a little bit by the time I can actually get that all together.
Yeah, you're definitely in the right place. Definitely, that's a great mixture of people in Nashville, artists and producers and business people. So you're definitely in the right place for that. And
Yeah.
be fantastic. So are you doing any live stuff over like Facebook Live or doing Venmo donations and things like that?
I have not. The Venmo thing kind of weirds me out. I don't ever fault artists for doing that, especially if they're doing a whole set, but I definitely don't feel like I have enough content to do that. In the future, maybe if I had more songs, but hopefully by the time I have more songs, we won't have a need for it anymore and I can just play out. So no, I haven't done anything like that. I've just kind of, once a song, I really focused on this song completely because I did everything myself. And because you can't actually, the process is kind of backwards. You can't register as an artist with all the different streaming platforms until you have music. So once the song was out, then I also had to do a ton of work to make sure that, all my artist information was correct, that my profiles look good. And then, on the back end of that, making sure I was registered with ASCAP and Sound Exchange and all that, so that if I do make any money from the songs, I will actually receive that money. So that was really like what I was 100% focused on when it released. And so since then, I've just been kind of bouncing a bunch of different ideas around and trying to figure out the best thing to pursue next. And since no one is really playing gigs right now anyway, I'm almost in a good place of like, I'm not behind because nobody's playing right now. So I can just focus on writing.
Very good. So are you doing a lot of writing in there? Do you have a regimen getting up in the morning? Okay, I'm going to write some lyrics, or just whenever it hits you?
So I still work 9 to 5 from home for ASCAP. So I definitely don't do anything during the day. I've kind of been all over the place lately because I have a couple songs that I feel like are closest to actually putting them out. But I need to figure out the best producer to work with. I would like to work with another writer to give me more feedback on my lyrics. I very much like to have as many people look at a song as possible before I put it out there, just because everybody has a little bit different take. and get as many opinions as I can from people that are more talented than me and, might point out some things that I wouldn't catch. So I have like 3 or 4 songs that are half baked, and I got to figure out some writers and producers and instrumentalists to work with. And then that is taking a little bit longer than I feel like it normally would, just because of COVID. So.
Good. You're ahead of the curve. So what for the future, what do you see? Do you see a full album out in a year or two and beyond?
Yeah, I definitely think at least an EP would be possible, because an EP is usually like 5 songs. I kind of there's an artist I've been really into lately named Jake Scott, and he's like a pop artist out of LA. And he has been releasing a song a month for over a year, which is definitely not sustainable for me right now. But I do like the idea of kind of just releasing singles, because I think it used to be that you would put out a whole album and you could not wait until your favorite artist came out with a full album. But for smaller artists, it definitely makes more sense fiscally and just with the attention span that our audiences have now to put out singles. Especially because, I'm funding everything myself. I'm finding people myself. And I have a small audience. It makes more sense to put out singles and then to keep writing and coming up with new stuff, and also being able to listen to what my audience wants to hear as well and adjusting versus, dumping thousands and thousands of dollars into a full album and then it just kind of sits there in cyberspace.
Yeah, which it would. Well, I appreciate your time. This was a lovely evening, and thank you for the song.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
best of luck. I really, really hope to see more of you, and we'll definitely hear from you soon, hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you so much.